Now there's a brand new webpage especially for this podcast. The Politicrat Daily Podcast can now be found on thepoliticrat.com, a brand new page that centralizes all of the places that you can listen to this podcast, the major platforms, and many others at thepoliticrat.com. Lots of content that you can see there right now and every single day. So subscribe now to the Politicrat Daily Podcast and make sure you visit thepoliticrat.com. Thank you. Welcome to the Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore. It is Friday, January the 8th, 2021. On this edition of the Politicrat, and justice for all? A look at a number of things. The announcement Joe Biden made yesterday of the Justice Department team. And wow, it looks good. And I think you will agree that it sounds good. Plus, impeachment, will it happen? And some more thoughts about the Capitol. Plus, New York City. And you won't want to miss this. Coming up next.
Please show me this on my phone. Show me. No.
You don't have to explain nothing to her.
Take the case off. That's mine. Literally, get it back. Please.
Are you kidding me? You feel like there's only one iPhone made in the world?
No. Okay, then show me the. Show me all my.
You get a life
over there. No, what's on your background?
You better go use find my iPhone. Go do that.
Find my iPhone is on.
No, you can't. No.
I'm the manager of the hotel.
I don't care.
He will
this
right
is my
now.
son.
Hey,
didn't you see me just come downstairs out of the elevator?
I'm trying to help. Man.
No, but you're not helping.
I am.
What you've been is disrespectful.
No, I'm trying to settle this situation.
I'm asking my son has nothing to do with her.
No.
I'm trying to figure out what's going on in the lobby.
Then show me the proof. No, he's not leaving. Show me the proof.
Are you
show me the
proof?
proof.
You better get on.
I need you away.
Let's go, kid.
I need you away.
I'm sorry.
Better get on. We have you. What you see two black people?
No, I'm not letting him walk away with my phone.
Wait. Better get on somewhere.
No, please get my phone back. I cannot not have my phone.
That was audio from video of an altercation that happened on December the 26th in a New York City hotel lobby. A woman named Miya Ponsetto, 22 years of age, had tackled a 14-year-old boy, accusing him of stealing her phone. Miya Ponsetto I think she's a white woman, but I will read the story and not that, I will explain this. But the young boy, the 14-year-old, is black. He also happens to be the son of a pretty darn famous jazz musician named Keyon Harrold. Now, I am not familiar personally with Keyon Harrold's repertoire and discography and his musicianship. I quite frankly am not familiar. Perhaps you might be. But nonetheless, Keyon Harrold Jr. was treated like a criminal by this 22-year-old who was completely out of control, at the very least, and quite frankly, was racist. I mentioned this particular case in passing on Sunday during the episode in which I talked about some white guy in the local San Francisco laundromat early in the morning saying end this and end that and end in the woodpile while I was in the laundromat. And in passing, when I told that story on Sunday's episode, I did mention this situation in New York City. So for the first few minutes, I do want to talk about this. There's a bit to get through on this episode, but I'm going to get through it. Try to put this in a coherent order because I did not, and generally do not, script these episodes. I mean, there are some exceptions to that, but generally speaking, pretty much all of what you hear from me on this podcast is unscripted. Pretty much, I'd say 98% of it is unscripted. Maybe more. I'd probably say 99% if it's unscripted. So this is the same. I am working with a situation of flying off the seat of my pants, really. So I want to start here with New York City. So I'm sure in case you're not aware of this, and you may well be aware of it, but if you're not, on December the 26th of 2020, there was an altercation in a hotel in New York in Soho. Soho is short for South of Houston Street in New York City, if you are familiar, as I am, someone who used to live in New York City. I love New York. It's the best city on the planet. There is more diversity and inclusion there than anywhere else on the planet, and it's a marvelous city, very energetic, and it's just endless. New York City is endless. Soho's a pretty darn nice little place as well. I walk through Soho quite a bit when I'm in New York City. New York City is a great walking city. You can really walk around, and if you're into exercise, as I am, you can walk around quite a bit, and it's great because you take off a couple of pounds, and you also get to notice the different people and the neighborhoods change and the businesses and the kinds of things that you can find and the eateries. And it's a fascinating place. The walks, the parks, the museums. There's so much in New York. So that's the backdrop for those of you who've never been to New York City. And I know lots of people who've never been to New York City. But it's a fabulous city. When we get back to some semblance of we can travel again, New York City is going to be an immediate destination for me. I mean, I when we do this, I think as people, make sure that New York City is one of your destinations. But that's just the backdrop here. Soho is a place where the Arlo Hotel can be found. And it is in that hotel that the jazz musician Keyon Harrold, whom I just mentioned, and his son Keyon Harrold Jr. were accosted. The 14-year-old Keyon Harrold Jr. accosted by the woman that you heard on that video. And let me just break down what happened there, because you obviously couldn't see it. I'm going to actually provide a link to the article in which the video is embedded that you heard the audio from just now. And I just want to explain this, actually, that she literally comes up to this guy, tries to get right up into this 14-year-old's face. She's a 22-year-old woman, and she's assaulting this 14-year-old boy. So this young black boy is under attack, literally. And there is surveillance video that is not got any audio to it, that I will also link to, in which this particular woman tackles this 14-year-old boy. You know who I think of, who was also 14? Black boy, 14 years old. Guess who I am thinking of? Did you guess? That's right. Emmett Till was 14 years old in 1955. There was a woman named Carolyn Donham who lied and said that Emmett Till had whistled at her or propositioned her and before too long there were at least 5 or 6 white men who had kidnapped, murdered, and tortured and drowned Emmett Till in Mississippi. 14 years old. This white mob of males set upon a 14-year-old boy like a pack of wolves. And then they tied chains and an anchor around his lifeless body that was mutilated, a face unrecognized, and they let him sink to the bottom of the river. You know the rest of this story. You know Mamie Till, and you know that she said, "I want the world to see what they did to my son. Don't cover his face. I want an open casket so you can see the evil and the hatred of these thuggish, murdering, executing white males, full-grown men, attacking, lynching a 14-year-old boy." That's what I thought of when I read this story. A modern day attempt. It didn't have to be a lynching, but what it marks is this presumption of guilt. And I haven't even read to you this story by Mihir Zaveri of the New York Times. I'm going to do so, and I'm going to break this down. I'm going to be forensic, but I'm also going to be concise. Here's the story from the New York Times. Woman who tackled black teenager at Soho Hotel is arrested by Mihir Zaveri, January the 7th, 2021. There is video that you just heard the audio from, and I will link to this in the liner notes of this episode. The article begins as follows, and I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to pick out some things. I may stop to do that, actually, in the interests of time. Law enforcement authorities in California on Thursday arrested a woman who had been caught on video tackling a black teenager in the lobby of a boutique hotel in Soho after falsely accusing him of stealing her cell phone, officials said. The arrest of the woman, Miya Ponsetto, by sheriff's deputies in Ventura County, California, was confirmed by the New York Police Department. It came after more than a week of mounting pressure on the department to make an arrest in the case, and with New York officers taking the unusual step to traveling to California to interview her. It was not clear what charges Miss Ponsetto, 22, faced in connection with the hotel incident, which happened on December 26th. Prosecutors have declined to discuss the case, noting earlier on Thursday that charges had not been filed. The episode at the hotel was yet another instance of black people being confronted with baseless accusations while going about their daily lives. It has drawn comparisons to an incident in May when a white woman called 911 to falsely claim that a black bird watcher in Central Park was threatening her life. The video was taken and posted on social media by Keyon Harrold, a prominent jazz musician who was staying at the Olive Hotel with his 14-year-old son, Keyon Harrold Jr. In the video, Miss Ponsetto can be seen confronting Mr. Harrold and his son after they walk into the hotel lobby, insisting without evidence that Keyon Jr. has her cell phone. Miss Ponsetto can be seen asking a hotel manager to help her, after which the manager identifies himself and asks Keyon to produce a cell phone in an attempt to verify Miss Ponsetto's claim. Surveillance footage released by the police last week shows Miss Ponsetto running after Keyon Jr. and tackling him. Miss Ponsetto was trying to rummage through Keyon Jr.'s pockets, Mr. Harrold said. Mr. Harrold said he was told by the hotel that an Uber driver found Miss Ponsetto's phone later in the day, and she picked it up from the hotel. Now I'm going to stop here for a second. My question is, and I have not read any other article except the one you are hearing me read to you right now. The question I have is, did she ever apologize? So, on December the 26th, 2020, the same day that she tackled this 14-year-old brother, 14. She's 22, he's 14. 14. She found the phone later that day. Did she apologize that day? I don't think she did. I'm going to continue reading here. I'm almost done. Captain Eric Bushow of the Ventura County Sheriff's Office said that Miss Ponsetto had been arrested in Piru, California, a small town about 45 miles northwest of downtown Los Angeles, where she had been living. Miss Ponsetto was driving to her neighborhood at around 4:30 p.m. local time when deputies and New York police officers pulled her over, Captain Bushow said. Miss Ponsetto refused to get out of the car at first and slammed a door on a deputy before being pulled from the car and taken into custody, he said. Well, pulled from the car, I want to know how that happened. And what kind of pull did they do? Refused to get out of the car. So right there, that is someone, I'm going to make a judgment here. That's someone who obviously is non-cooperative. Now, someone might say, well, she doesn't have to get out of the car. But refused to get out of the car and slammed the door on a deputy. There could be a problem with, that could be a problem, perhaps. Pulled from the car. I want to know if she was placed under arrest. Well, obviously she was. So obviously, at least if you read from that little paragraph I just read, you're dealing with somebody who, at least the way as the New York Times sees it, and the New York Times is certainly not the most perfect article, is someone who could be potentially an issue. And someone who obviously is uncooperative, at least in the sense of getting out of a vehicle. There was certainly probable cause. Certainly was. There's video of her tackling this boy, tackling the young boy. So that's an assault and battery. So they certainly have probable cause based upon the video. Ms. Ponsetto was being held in the Ventura County Jail on Thursday night with an extradition hearing to be held soon, Captain Basho said. A lawyer for Ms. Ponsetto, Sharon H. Gatan, did not immediately respond to a request for comment on Thursday night. Ms. Ponsetto had been the subject of public scrutiny and speculation about possible criminal charges since the video emerged. According to public records, she faced unrelated criminal charges in California, including a lewd conduct charge in Los Angeles County involving an incident in February and a charge of driving while intoxicated in Ventura County following an incident in October. So here we have it. We have somebody who wouldn't get out of her car, slammed the door in a deputy's face, had to be pulled out of her car, tackled a young boy, accused him, falsely accused him of stealing her phone, found the phone through Uber later on, had it returned to her, didn't apologize that day, obviously flew back to California from that New York hotel. And then we find out that she had unrelated criminal charges against her, a lewd conduct charge, and a DWI charge. And that was October of last year. So what happened? Here's the other thing. What are the authorities doing? How are they letting this 22-year-old woman who had a charge of lewdness in February of 2020, how are they not following up and actually putting her in custody or at least arresting her? So she was allowed to have a lewd conduct charge on her record in February, an incident that the New York Times does not delve into or describe. But obviously, lewdness is something to do with some kind of inappropriate, either public indecency, sexual situation that is inappropriate, public nudity or something like that. New York Times description does not go into it at all. We just know that it is an incident in February. I guess if you do more research and digging, you could find out what that is. But the point is that this is what is going on. And a charge of DWI in October. So from February to October, she was charged in February, charged in October. And what happened in those intervening 8 months? What happened? She was given a pass? And then in December of last year, she tackles, assaults, and batters a 14-year-old boy and also commits a crime of falsely accusing him. False accusations are crimes. And that kind of false reporting, false accusation is a crime in New York. It's a crime in many states. Then she gets on the plane after lying, after getting her phone, doesn't apologize, flies back to California, and then finally they get her. And if it's not for the pressure, if it's not for God, this article, I won't read the rest of it. I'll just pick out a couple other things. It's a long article that's a bit more detailed, and I think it's good that it is detailed. But I just want to try to get to the meat and the bones of things here, which is this. If it wasn't for Keyon Jr.'s father, Keyon Sr., if it wasn't for Keyon Harrold videotaping this with his phone, video recording it with his phone, and posting it on Instagram, because there's an Instagram video from his phone as well, we wouldn't have known anything about this. And the police wouldn't have flown clear across the country from the east to the west coast, out here in California, but south of San Francisco by almost 400 miles, Ventura County, 390 miles away or so, south of here, and flew across country, a 5.5-hour flight, flew across country. It wouldn't have happened had it not been for Keyon Harrold taking his phone out and recording it and putting it on social media. I mean, this is the thing that's crazy to me. And I'm going to pick this up here and point something to you. The lawyer, Ms. Gatan, says, Ms. Ponsetto was not targeting Mr. Harrold or his son because of their race. And then the article points out she is of Puerto Rican and Vietnamese descent and does not identify as white, Ms. Gatan says. What the hell does that have to do with anything? What the heck does that mean? There are people of other races who can be racist against black people. The point is there's something called anti-black racism. And what that means is that anyone can be racist against a black person. That person need not be a white person for that to happen. You can have many different kinds of people, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Vietnamese, other South Asians. There was a episode of this podcast I did last summer where myself and Manju Kulkarni spoke about anti-black racism. In fact, Manju Kulkarni talked about this. In fact, I played a portion of this on the highlights from the 2020 conversations that I did on December the 31st. It's available, actually, on the homepage of the the Politicrat.com. I'm thinking of my other thing, the film stuff, but no. On the Politicrat.com, on the homepage, you will see the embedded episode of the highlights of conversations of 2020. And Manju Kulkarni is on there. And there's an excerpt, I think that's the excerpt, that she talks about this anti-black racism in the Asian community. So I don't get what her lawyer is talking about here. As if the only racist people on the planet are white people. That's just, this shows the ignorance. Oh, she's Puerto Rican and Vietnamese, so that doesn't make her racist? Really? She's not, quote, she's not trying to make any racial statement. Ms. Gatan said, she's a female herself of mixed cultural descent. She's not some blonde-haired, blue-eyed, privileged white lady. She literally just wanted to get her phone back. Look. That statement, now look, the way the article's written always conjures things up, and you have to decipher this stuff. What is not being said there is, why is she going after a black guy? Hello? Why is a 22-year-old woman going after a 14-year-old black boy? And here's the real question. If that was a 14-year-old white boy, do you think that she would have tackled him? Do you think that she would have accused him? And do you think that she would have accused him falsely, knowing that that young white boy did not have her phone? The point I make here is that even the way the lawyer framed things in the context of how this article is written presupposes a criminality of black people, in this case, a 14-year-old black boy. That's the issue. That is the issue. And we as black people have to go through this thing, what I call credentialing, where we have to constantly prove that we belong in the spaces that we stand and exist in, especially in this white society that we are swimming through. As a black person, you constantly have to self-credential. You constantly are being asked to prove that you belong here, to prove that that cell phone is yours, that that car you're driving belongs to you, that your cell phone isn't a gun, that this is the house you live in, that this person is your wife, and you're not attacking your wife, and you're not taking your wife somewhere where you shouldn't, because maybe your wife is a different race from you, i.e. white. And so there's this presumption that there's no possible way that the two of you could ever have any kind of relationship, because you surely are up to no good. And that applies across the board when it comes to black and someone else. A black woman with a white man. I've not told this story before, but I know this story. It's not something that people would be surprised at. But there were stories years ago, and not so many years ago. A black woman with her white husband driving. Forget where it was. It could have been in the South or in the Midwest. And she had made this big Thanksgiving dinner, because that's what it was. And so they were, this is a few years ago, and they were visiting, I think, his parents, the husband's parents. So she was visiting her in-laws. And on the way, the police stopped them. The white man was driving. The cops stopped the vehicle. I think the black woman was either in the front seat, or maybe in the back, because she wanted to stabilize all this food that she had made. And I don't remember what it was, but the point is that the cops stopped the vehicle, and the cops never asked the driver, the white driver, her husband, for ID. But they did ask the black woman for ID. And they also asked her, what is she doing in the vehicle? And they also asked her, can we check what you've got there? We're looking to see if there's any drugs in there. And they made her empty out this food. So she was screwed. Because what are you doing with a white man in your car, or in his car, or in yours? And I think the car was hers, by the way, but he was driving. She had to tell these cops that this is her husband. And somehow the cops didn't believe that. So the white guy, of course, has to say, officers, this is my wife. And then they back off, but not before they humiliate the black woman. Have her empty out her food. We're looking for drugs, so you've got to take all that out, because you might have drugs hidden in your Thanksgiving dinner. The credentialing that continues Because surely these cops had something that they could do. Surely they would go, to a white woman and pull out all of her food if she and her white husband were driving. Surely they would do that. Of course they would. This assumption about what black people are or are not doing is something that is not only systemic and baked into the cake, it is the very DNA of this country and many others. So many white people innocently thinking that this is really good, but it's poisonous. You really don't belong here. You really don't. How many incidents have we seen with white men and women credentialing black people who live in neighborhoods, who live in the suburbs, who live in the cities? Oh, no, you don't. Can you show me some ID? This white guy at a swimming pool a couple of years ago. Remember that one with the black woman and their family? Can you show me some ID? You're not supposed to be doing this. Can you remember the white woman, the barbecue woman in Oakland, California? Well, you're not supposed to be doing this here because the rules and the law say. And it required a white woman to intervene because the black people were telling her to get lost. And she's calling the police. And there's a white woman who steps right up. To her credit, good for her. More white people need to be doing this. And she got up in this other white woman's face and said, you need to get out of here. You need to go. I'm recording you and you need to go. And there have been lots of other incidents where you've had all these white people calling the police on black people, on a 6-year-old black girl here in San Francisco in the last year or two. I kid you not, she's selling water in front of her building. And this white woman comes up to her and puts on a phone and gets in the face of the 6-year-old girl. What is wrong with these folks? Honestly. To the white people listening to me right now, if you see anything like this going on, you really do need to speak up and say something. You really do. All this nonsense. And if you look at that video, you'll see this 22-year-old string bean is tapping the white manager on his shoulder. There. That's the guy. He's got my phone. And then the manager, of course, is automatic, right? This thing that a lot of white people have, this automatic assumption, well, maybe I should check this out because he's black and she's saying that he has it. Let me just verify what she says. Instead of stopping and saying, well, miss, excuse me, where is your phone? Why does the hotel manager have to intervene and ask the guy to produce the phone? Why is the hotel manager doing that? Huh? Why is that happening? There's this code that goes on. And white people have told me this too, by the way. Have told me that they have had this happen where they have been gestured to in the same kind of way about a black person, either in a public space or a private one. And then that white person who told me that has had to shatter that kind of this invisible code, that little wink, wink, nudge, nudge assent between us two white people over here. You know what I'm talking about if you're white. This has happened to you, hasn't it? You have that moment where that white person who's a complete stranger to you is a fellow white person and you click in public because you see you see a black person or a brown person or maybe an Asian person, and you have this invisible telepathy, this click, And you make this kind of secret language between each of you, the racist language that you have when you see that black person walk in and you make this comment, you wink or you nudge or you roll your eyes or you give that look to your fellow white brethren who you've not seen except for maybe 3 seconds before in your very life when you enter the establishment that you're doing this in. So there's this kind of racial telepathy that goes on between you, this kind of invisible assent. Come on, you know what I'm talking about. And you wink and you do this and you give the look. Oh, that black person with you, the roll of your eyes, gesturing. Come on, I know some of you have done this. Not far from here. In fact, in Nancy Pelosi's neck of the woods, not far from there. I think people will remember that a Filipino brother, a member of the LGBTQIA community, I think he's moved from that neighborhood there. I went past there not too long ago, and I don't think he lives there anymore. Well, I don't know. Remember with the white woman and the white man, that couple who accused this Filipino man of defacing property and said to him, well, this isn't yours. You don't live here. Do you remember that? It was only last year. It was last summer. It was around April or May. I think it was around May or June, actually, of last year, 2020. And they said, you don't live here. The white woman said that to him. You don't live here. I know who lives here. And this is the guy who lives there that she's telling you don't live there. The guy owns the bloomin' place. And she's coming up to him with her white privilege and her arrogance and her racism and telling this guy, you don't live here. Why are you writing Black Lives Matter on the wall here? This isn't your property. The guy owns the bloomin' thing. Who lives here? Well, who lives here then, he said to her. You don't. I know who lives here. And I'm going to call the police. She literally calls the cops. And within 5 or 10 minutes, the police come. And they see the Filipino brother. And he just says, hey, what's going on? The cops go, hey, hi, how you doing? 1 or 2 of the police officers happen to know him. He has some kind of rapport with them. And if it's not for that, I don't know what would happen. Well, I know what would have happened. But he'd been in the neighborhood for 18 years. But that doesn't matter how many years. It's the arrogance and the entitlement. We need to smash that garbage, this arrogance and this entitlement that so many white people have, this white privilege. But it goes deeper than the privilege. There is racism and it's endemic. Do you know that off the back of that incident that I just described, the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, that same year, last year, 2020, during the summer or thereabouts, maybe August, September of last year, passed a law called the Karen Act. I kid you not. That's what happened. The Karen Act. The Karen Act. And it was an act to criminalize racial profiling specifically with white people who make these calls to police, lie, and say, hey, that black person over there stole my phone, or hey, that person of color over here doesn't belong here, even though it's his bloomin' place that he owns and has owned for 18 years. It's all about you're in a space you're not supposed to be in. That's what the racist thing is. You're not supposed to be here. You're black. You're not supposed to be in this nice neighborhood. You know what some woman asked me? White woman from Germany, I think it was. Years and years ago, here in San Francisco. What are you doing living here? I kid you not. What are you doing living here? I asked her, what are you doing living here? And she did not have an answer. I haven't even got to the rest of this story. I haven't got to it yet. And I said I'd be concise. I said I'd be forensic. But I am unscripted. And so there is that. But I just want to continue here with this story. The lawyer for Miss Ponsetto. Oh, dearie me. This is what the rubber stamping of racist white people is, or racist anybody, but particularly in this case, since she says she's not white, she's Vietnamese and Puerto Rican. Like Vietnamese people can't be racist. It's about anti-black racism. That's what it is. And of course racism comes in different forms. Of course it is. You've got racism against Jewish people and anti-Semitism. You've got other forms of racism. But one of the most clear-cut ones, frequent ones, ever-present ones, and institutionalized ones is anti-black racism. That's institutionalized to such a pervasive degree across the planet. So against that backdrop, this is the lawyer, Miss Keyon, for Miss Ponsetto. Miss Keyon says, this is not funny, but this is what the article says in the New York Times. Woman who tackled black teenager at Soho Hotel is arrested is the title. Miss Ponsetto saw Keyon Jr. with a phone and thought it was hers, according to Miss Keyon. The question I have is, why would she think that a black boy who she'd never seen before, she literally just laid eyes on him, why would she think that this black boy who has a phone, why would she think that the phone he has is her phone? Think about that for a second. Am I asking a rhetorical question? Or am I just saying that this woman is racist? And am I just saying, as I said earlier, if she saw a 14-year-old boy with a phone, would she automatically think that that phone was hers? You know the answer. So many in these situations, so many people, be they white, be they otherwise, it's always about, but particularly when it's white people, white police, it may be, it could be black police. But the whole thing is, I thought I was going to be shot. I thought I was in fear of my life. I was afraid. This is what the society does. This is what the system does. It offers these escape clauses. This is what a racist, institutionally racist system does. It offers the language of escape clause so that someone like this lawyer, Miss Keyon, I don't know if she's white, if she's Middle Eastern. I don't know. Quite frankly, I have no idea. But whoever and whatever she is or looks like, there is this language that is institutionally expected and accepted Quote, "What happened, happened," Miss Gutan said. Would she do it again? No. It was purely out of her being anxious, stressed, cornered, feeling helpless, lost, alone, unsupported. And what in the living fuck does that have to do with you jumping a 14-year-old boy, tackling him, assaulting him, battering him? The escape clause. Oh, she was anxious. Oh, she was stressed and cornered, feeling helpless, lost, alone, unsupported. So that's okay. She can go jump and tackle a 14-year-old boy for no reason. So what if I'm feeling anxious and stressed and cornered and helpless, lost, alone, unsupported, and I happen to walk down the street and I just jump a 14-year-old white boy or a 14-year-old white girl because I think that that white girl or white boy has my cell phone? What do you think is going to happen to me if that were to happen? Try finding a lawyer who would defend me and go to the New York Times and say, "What happened, happened." Would he do it again? No. It was purely out of him being anxious and stressed and cornered and helpless and lost and alone and unsupported in a racist society. I don't think that's going to wash. Not only is it not going to really wash with a vast number of white people, there are going to be some people in the black community who ain't going for that either. You jumped a 14-year-old boy? Ooh, you're a molester. You jumped a 14-year-old girl? What the hell's wrong with you? Huh? You're a grown-ass man and you're jumping girls? You're a sick one. Could you blame them for thinking that in my hypothetical? But it's just casually spoken in a New York Times article. A lawyer speaking the language that this society speaks. Maybe you speak it, maybe you don't. But this code of assumption that this black person does not deserve to be here, let alone you're in this space, it's the assumption that you aren't supposed to be here. You're not supposed to be here. You're in this swanky Soho hotel. You know, you're not supposed to be here. You're black. So that phone that you have is probably stolen. You're black. So when the cops pull you over, that Mercedes you're driving or that Bentley you're driving, that's probably stolen, right? Where did you get this car? I'm stopping you because your rims, where did you get those rims? And there the lawyer just talks and talks. What happened, happened. So it's all subjective to what the white person or the offending anti-black racist person does. The anti-black racist, right? That anti-black racist person gets the pass. And anything that he or she or they feels is used as a justification. You had a bad day. You jump a black person. You know that song, You Had a Bad Day. I forget who sings it. No, that's permissible. you can just knock yourself out. Jump this 14-year-old boy in full view of everybody. Jumped him. Oh, and did I remember to tell you that she was charged with lewd conduct? Can we just add that again? I want to reinstate that from earlier. So there's a 22-year-old woman who has, by the way, been charged with lewd conduct. And she's jumping a 14-year-old boy a few months later. Oh, by the way, make that 10 months later. 10 months later. So the system has let her slide. So this woman is a known criminal offender, or at least has been charged with crimes. 2 different ones. Slams a door in a deputy's face. They have to drag or pull her out of her car. I think this person needs to be put on trial and put behind bars. She is not an innocent. And the hotel manager accessorizes her racism. Yeah, oh yeah, let me check you. Let me search you. Let me check you. Instead of, like I said earlier, instead of saying to the woman, Miss, you're going to have to file a complaint, file a police report. But I'm sorry, our policy here is not to be searching or asking other guests to do things. You need to deal with this off the premises, and you need to call the police or deal with a police report. Calling the police, of course, is never a good idea for black people because you know what happens. And that's another thing. And it doesn't matter if the person's black or white. It doesn't matter if the person's white or, say, not white. I hate that term, non-white. That's such a ridiculously racist term. I'm talking about if the person's Vietnamese or Asian and they called the police and it's a black person they're calling them on, the benefit of the doubt is always going to go to the Asian person or the brown person or the white person. It ain't going to go to the black person. Doesn't matter what shade that black person is. It ain't going to go to them. I'm telling you. In a racist society, that doesn't happen. And this is this lawyer. Oh my gosh, how old is this? I'm sorry, the ageist. How old is this lawyer? Quote, she's not a celebrity. She's not a Kardashian, Miss Gatan said. She doesn't know how to act. She doesn't know how to behave. She's a young girl. Young girl, get out of my heart. I love you with love. You're much too young, girl. Oh, boy. Good grief. I know some people, you have to be of a certain age to know that song. I don't know if I did it. I don't know if I did him any justice singing it. But anyway. Oh, she's a young girl. 22-year-old woman. No, but what's the 14-year-old boy then? If she's a young girl at 20, this is the lawyer calling her a young girl. And she's a 22-year-old woman. She is an adult. She's a young girl, though, Young girl, that's the lawyer talking. The female lawyer. Calling her a young girl at 22 years old. I think that's a woman last time I checked. Yeah, I mean, last time I checked, a 22-year-old. I mean, God, that is so not what I'm getting at here. The last time I checked the definition of what an adult is, in this country at least, in most states in the United States, that is someone who is 18 years old and above. And last time I checked my arithmetic, 22 was above 18 numerically. So if this lawyer, who sounds like a real doozy of a lawyer, is talking about she's a young girl. What is that 14-year-old boy? So here's the last thing. Reverend Sharpton and Ben Crump had a press conference there recently in New York City. And Ben Crump, as you know, was a civil rights lawyer, attorney, who has too often been the person who's had to, well, like Reverend Sharpton, I think, once said, if you have Ben Crump by your side, that's usually bad news. Not because of Ben Crump, but because there is someone who's been murdered in your family. You've lost a loved one because some cop has murdered your loved one or some white mob has murdered your loved one. So when you've got Ben Crump sitting next to you and there's cameras and lights and microphones in your face, it's probably not a good thing if you do not know anything else about Ben Crump. So they had this press conference and they talked about Emmett Till. Mr. Crump talked about Emmett Till, which of course I led with that even before I read this article, because that's the first. When I heard about this incident a few weeks ago, that was the first thing, just over a week and a half ago now, or thereabouts, maybe almost 2 weeks. And I immediately thought of Emmett Till, just like Amy Cooper in the same New York City, right? About 50 blocks north of Soho or whatever. Or whatever, yeah, roughly 60 blocks, I'd say, north in Central Park. And as I, mentioned in the article, she's saying that this black man who's a bird watcher, it doesn't matter what the black man is, what his occupation is, whether he does nothing or does something, doesn't matter, right? We're not fixated on the occupations. I mean, even though she is actually an investment banker, not any longer. I wonder if she's got a job. Do you think Amy Cooper, by the way, has a job in this pandemic? Do you think she's got a job? Do you think she got a job back? That's another topic for another day. But basically what happened at the press conference is that Reverend Sharpton and Ben Crump called on prosecutors and the police to bring charges on this woman who clearly needs to be charged again for another criminal offense and finally brought to justice. Oh, gosh. So she had 2 outstanding charges on her. The system here in California lets her slide for months. And she goes and does this. It's caught on video, so there's no explaining it away. She's assaulted a 14-year-old boy. Boy, that lawyer that she's got, I don't know who's what. I mean, the lawyer's almost as bad as she is. I know that as a lawyer myself, as an attorney myself, I know that you have to, I know that, listen, I'm not in the criminal law field. Thank goodness. I've interned at law firms and in places with doing criminal law stuff as an intern, but my whole thing is, I'm not in doing anything to do with criminal law. Mine is much more white collar oriented, but that's beside the point here. The point here is that this is all about, we'll wait and see if they bring charges. But this is all about the expectations and the racism and people who have baked it into the systemic cake. And that systemic cake has everybody saying, oh, black equals dangerous and black equals, a threat, which the article goes into. And then the whole class thing about, the hotel, it's got all these views and all this and da-da-da-da-da-da. The hotel apologized to Mr. Harrold and his son. And it's just ridiculous. That apologize. Why don't you just remove two things. Why don't you revoke all the charges for the hotel stay? Because apparently both of the Harrolds have been staying there since the middle of December. Why don't you just not charge them for the hotel stay? Number one. Number two, if they choose to come back there, comp them. And three, give them subsequent free visits on at least 2 more occasions. And if they don't want to go to the hotel, compensate them with some money. Maybe that's where the courts come in. Get a settlement, whatever it has to be. It's just ridiculous. This is 2021 now. And there's always this assumption, this woman would never go up to somebody white and tackle them. And I don't want to hear about, well, she's mentally unhinged I don't want to hear that. There's a language of racism here that everybody knows goes on. The winking, the code, the subliminals, and this and the that. It's just all over the place, and no one wants to. Well, some people do, because there are some white people who will say hell no, but most will not. It's like the woman in the laundromat who, when the guy, and I told you my reasons for not confronting him in this era of COVID. Well, what was hers? Maybe she probably had some of the same reasons. But any attempt at partnership as ally or allyship, or I prefer the word partnership because allyship to me is not as abiding. It seems like an empty term. Partners, that's like you're both going through this, one of you very differently than the other, but you're invested in making a stand. Ally sounds more like Ally Bank, the commercial. But anyway, I could talk about this for another episode. I'm going to link to that story. But I just wanted to give you this flavor here. I think you have it, I hope.
How could we not be prepared? How could, in a joint session of Congress with the Vice President in the building, you not do better than this? Where were the National Guard? The Black Lives Matter protest, have you seen the images on the Capitol steps where we had National Guard members in riot gear? Why weren't you as prepared this time around? Where was the Pentagon? There's all kind of stories that they were refusing to activate the D.C. National Guard. I don't believe that to be true. But what kind of intelligence gathering apparatus does the Capitol Hill Police Department and the agencies in charge of defending the Capitol have? How could they fail so miserably? We're 20 years after 9/11, right? Yesterday, they could have blown the building up. They could have killed us all. They could have destroyed the government. People coming through the windows had backpacks as big as my desk on the Senate. They should have been challenged. Warning shots should have been fired and lethal force should have been used once they penetrated the seat of government. Those backpacks could have had bombs, chemical agents, weapons. We dodged a major bullet yesterday. If this is not a wake-up call, I do not know what is. Is it a money problem? If it is, we'll fix it. Is it a leadership problem? Obviously. Is it an intel failure of the highest proportions? Absolutely.
That was Lindsey Graham. And really, I think at this point now, the impeachment, the idea of impeaching Donald Trump again, is really not only gaining currency, it's very likely to happen in the next few days. I think that the events of Wednesday, the terrorist attack by these unruly, thuggish, violent white men, and there were some women there too. One of them was killed. Apparently, according to police or someone, there was no choice but to kill this woman, which, whew, boy. I look, 4 people killed. I mean, and you notice that story is not really gaining any kind of really deep currency. And if it is, there's a glorification of the people who have been killed. And yet some of them were gun-toting. One of them had guns. There were guns amongst these people. That's not being talked about very much. You know, I talked about this in yesterday's episode. I could have gone a lot further. You know, I mean, it's just, again, this system that protects white violence and that upholds it and authorizes it and champions it and designs, again, as I said earlier, escape clauses for it. That is the system that we have in this country, where you've got this credentialing that the society, the racist society, is asking of black people who are just minding their own business, such as minding their own business, Exhibit A, Keyon and his father at the hotel, just mind their own business in an establishment that they have a right to be in. And they are now being asked to be producing credentials as if they're in South Africa during apartheid, or if they are in Nazi Germany, or if they are being stopped by the police. It's a hotel manager that comes up to a 14-year-old boy and says to him, "Where's her phone? Do you have her phone?" Not bothering to say to the woman, "Look, excuse me, I can't get involved here with your dispute. You need to take this outside off the premises, and you need to sort this out off these premises. Or you need to, whatever, you know, file a police report." But no, instantly she taps him softly. Sick him, sick him, sick him, you know, sick him. Go get him. Like he's the little dog that has to chase after the black person. This isn't Birmingham, Alabama. It's New York City, although that doesn't matter where. It matters what and whom. And what this hotel manager did was a despicable thing. So this whole thing, the contrast is, you know, black people minding their own business and they're being asked for credentials. They are being accused of crime. And then the white guy that kills in Kenosha, shoots 2 people, shoots the arm, blows the arm off the other, gets to go back across state lines. That's the example that I would cite. Right? I mean, yes, people talk about Black Lives Matter and the military, and all the military police are all over the place, the National Guard. They swarmed the blooming steps in D.C. of the Lincoln Memorial or whatever. They all covered the place. Covered it last summer. Peaceful protesters. But the white 17-year-old boy is allowed to, with an AK, assault rifle, kill 2 people, 2 white people on top of that, and then kill and shoot the arm off of another person, also white, and then just go back home. And then this whole battle of extradition. Was he going to be allowed to come back? He wasn't crossing state lines with an AK-47 into that state. That's a charge too. But, you know, we're still waiting to find out about all that kind of thing. Unless I haven't looked at the details lately about the story. But you see what I mean? How there's an escape clause for white male violence. That's really what I wanted to get to in the previous episode, yesterday's episode. But I don't think I quite hit the nail on the head the way I wanted to. You know, when you hit a nail with a hammer and you don't hit it straight, squarely on, you kind of just hit to the side. So it doesn't really just boom, line up and go into the wall or wherever you're nailing it to hang up a portrait or a photo or whatever it is you're hanging up on that wall with the nail. But I think I just did it. He just hit the nail where I wanted to hit it, right down the middle. All of that is to say that impeachment's most likely going to happen here. Mike Pence is not interested in 25th Amendment. Speaker Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Lindsey Graham, in that little piece, very clearly, when he says, they could have blown the building up, and he's right. It's one of the few times I think that Lindsey Graham's making a little bit of sense. I'm not going to exalt that, but anybody can make sense of that. Yeah, he was right. They dodged a bullet. There's no question. They literally could have been murdered. All of them. That could have been Timothy McVeigh, 1995, at the Oklahoma City Federal Building. Remember that? The Oklahoma City Murrah, I guess it's called Murrah Building or whatever, the Federal Building, with 185 people killed. And he got the death penalty for that, by the way. Timothy McVeigh. He of the Turner Diaries reading. He exalted the Turner Diaries, which believed in race war, which is what Donald Trump is still trying to do, although some people might say he's already succeeded in it. But they're all talking about him as if they want to impeach. And I'm going to play some extraordinary clips from Speaker Pelosi. And I've been a critic of hers. There are times I have voted for her. There are times I have not voted for her. A la most recently the last 2 or 3 times she's run. I'm going to play some clips right now of Chuck Schumer. There's a couple of those, or one or two of those. I'll play those right now.
Make no mistake about it. The reprehensible acts yesterday were incited by the President of the United States. Yesterday's events would not have happened without him. If there were no President Trump, this would not have happened, plain and simple. The fish stinks from the head, plain and simple. And so I believe the president is dangerous and should not hold office one day longer. He may have only 13 days left as president, but yesterday demonstrated that each and every one of those days is a threat to democracy so long as he is in power. The quickest and most effective way to remove this president from office would be for the vice president to immediately invoke the 25th Amendment. The vice president can invoke the 25th Amendment today, and if the cabinet votes, he's gone. They should do it now. If the vice president and the cabinet refuse to stand up, Congress should reconvene to impeach the president. Plain and simple. We don't need a lengthy debate. The president's abuse of power, his incitement of a mob against a duly elected representative body of the United States is a manifestly impeachable offense. If there ever was an impeachable offense, what the president did was it. And if you don't think he won't spend his days out of office promoting conspiracies, stoking grievances, and doing more of the same, you're kidding yourselves. We cannot shrug our shoulders at something as serious as this. We cannot say this was a one-time incident and it will go away. My fellow Americans, we cannot treat our democracy like this is something We cannot treat our democracy like this is something out of our control. If we just shrug our shoulders about violence and mayhem, if we shrug our shoulders about dangerous conspiracies and misinformation, the president, another president, or even this president, if he tried again, could do the same. Our democracy is at risk. If we shrug our shoulders when actions like this occur, mark my words, the days of our democracy are numbered. We have to fight this with all we can. And I'd like to make one other point on a related subject. It was a... That's not the whole statement.
That's all it is, yeah.
Okay. It was appalling how ill-prepared the Congress was for these attacks, which were known about in advance. I will dismiss the sergeant at arms the day I become majority leader, January 21st, if McConnell, who appointed him, doesn't get rid of him sooner. He must go. He did a terrible, terrible job. The men and women of the Capitol Hill Police, they're fine people, but they had no leadership, no preparation. Everyone knew this would happen. The sergeant at arms has been derelict in his duty. He doesn't deserve to be in office. Again, he was appointed by Mitch McConnell because McConnell is majority leader. If McConnell doesn't get rid of him, I will the first day that I become majority leader, January 21st. And I can tell you this, that this was a frightening experience. At one point, I was only 30 feet away from some protesters who were down the hall. And to have what happened should never, ever happen again. Furthermore, and this was bipartisan, Speaker Pelosi, Leader McConnell, Leader McCarthy and I got on the phone with the Secretary of Defense. We got on the phone with the Attorney General. We were on the phone with the Secretary of the Army and many other officials and pushed them to get more police there quickly. At the early moments, there were not enough forces there. And the question is, why weren't they there in advance? And then why didn't they get there ASAP? All of that needs a looking into.
To do a quote-unquote quick impeachment would need unanimous consent to get around the established rules. Is it actually feasible to do an impeachment?
Well, Speaker Pelosi and the House initiated. A large number of her members have called for it. And we can do, and, I leave it to them to do it ASAP. Then, once it comes over from the House, it has preference on the Senate floor.
I don't think that the soon-to-be majority leader in the United States Senate could have put it any clearer than that. And it's good to hear that they're talking like this. But I think, in truth, that Donald Trump could have been impeached at any point over these last 4 years. And he's already been impeached once. He could have been impeached literally the second day or first day. He never divulged, or rather divested his trust. He never divested his financial interests. He never put them into a blind trust. There's automatic issues there. Automatic problems. And I'm not talking the Pointer Sisters with automatic. I'm just talking about there's automatic problems there. And also, all of this stuff with his properties and foreign leaders staying there and having to pay, that's a problem. That's a violation of the Emoluments Clause, which is an automatic impeachable offense. They could have absolutely done that. The House of Representatives could have done this a million years ago. And I remember in the fond old days of 2017 and 2018, where Speaker Pelosi was saying, don't bring impeachment anywhere near me. She was saying that as recently as early 2019. Don't bring impeachment anywhere near. I'm not interested. Nor was Adam Schiff, by the way. I think it's helpful to go through the record of that, because by the end of in 2019, he was well in deep in it as a House impeachment manager, of course, into 2020. But before that, doing his impeachment inquiry hearings. That happened. So fortunes turn as the political pressure and the people out there in the world put pressure on. And Speaker Pelosi, who I'm going to play in a few moments, talks about that. And you're going to see this bill that Congresswoman Ilhan Omar of Minnesota has put up is getting a lot of support. There's literally almost now, I think, 150 members. They really could start this. I think you need 2/3 of the House to bring the impeachment action. And I think they're very close, if not right there. Or they may have, by the time you listen to this, they may have shattered it. And they will bring this impeachment. I mean, there's no question it's going to happen. I think they're going to, because the House is the one that needs to act, and it's a simple majority. So he will be impeached again, and then it will go to the House. Excuse me, the Senate. Like, gosh. And they will decide whether to remove him. And I think this time they will remove him. I actually think so. Given what happened on Wednesday, absolutely. Absolutely. You'll still have your 7 or 8, 6 or 7. You know who the Republican senators are who are going to say no to this. But I think the moderate Republicans this time will absolutely go along and vote to convict, especially on the back of what happened. 4 people dead. This guy is a clear and present danger. Some of the stuff that Speaker Pelosi says, I think, is extraordinary for her, because she's not spoken, in my view, like this before. You know? You remember that song from back in the day? I never knew love like this before. Open my eyes and I never... You know that song. Some of you do. But I never knew Speaker Pelosi like this before. Honestly, you've got to listen to some of these clips I'm going to be playing. And I'm going to just kind of play them in a row here, because I do think they need to be heard. Here they are.
Putin wants to undermine democracy. That's what he's about domestically and internationally. And the president gave him the biggest of all of his many gifts to Putin, the biggest gift yesterday. My members are very much interested, as are my phone is exploding with impeach. But president must be held accountable again. The fact that these people were incited, and you know what? Last night, I don't know if you heard on the floor, but some of the Republicans and their enabling of the president's bad behavior have said those were not Trumpites. They were Antifa invading the Capitol, disguised as Trumpites. Right. So we have a problem here with the enabling that is going on with the Republicans in the Congress as well. This man is deadly to our democracy and to our people.
I've never heard Speaker Pelosi like that, ever. And it's good. It's good, you know. It's good that she is speaking in this way. Of course, a lot has gone on, and impeachment must happen. And I believe it's going to. I'm very confident that at some point in the next few days, it will happen. And I do think he's going to be removed. I do think that Donald Trump will be removed in his final few days. I just think that it's better for the entire country that happens. Obviously, people have forgotten, by the way, some people have, that Donald Trump, of course, has made Joe Biden's transition harder. Despite these stupid videos he puts out, Donald Trump has been refusing to share information on national security and all kinds of things with this transition team of Joe Biden's. And, you know, that's another reason that we need to make sure that Donald Trump is removed immediately from office. Immediately. He's never going to resign. And Mike Pence has intimated that he is not going to get the 25th Amendment into place. And by the way, that cabinet has almost emptied out anyhow. They've all resigned. I mean, pretty much all of them have. There's only a few left. And so you need, I think, 50% of the cabinet to make the 25th Amendment feasible, so that if 50% of the people agree, I guess, at least 50%, or at least 50% of them being present to agree, then it's viable. But it's not going to be viable when you know, you've got rats fleeing from the sinking ship from the Titanic Part 2. I mean, that's not going to be sufficient. So Speaker Pelosi has to do this, and every indication that I have seen and that you've seen shows that she and the House are going to have impeachment ready sometime. They may have it voted on sometime next week. I mean, that would be great. And hopefully the Senate will remove him as well. I think that they will, but it depends on which Senate. And also it depends on how many Republicans are going to go along with this. I mean, I know that some are in the Senate, and I actually think more will because of what happened just 2 days ago.
Yesterday's horrific events at the Capitol reminded us that our democracy cannot be taken for granted, that our nation has a long history of disinformation, white supremacist violence, mob violence. It also reminded us that our values and our Constitution and our democracy, these do not protect themselves. It is people with courage who do that. And I am honored to return to a department that I know will push every day for justice, accountability, and equality under the law. It will not be enough to restore what has been undermined or lost. This moment demands bold leadership. The Department of Justice, as it has done throughout its storied history, will have to uncover and reckon with hard truths, hold people, companies, and institutions accountable to our Constitution and laws, drive change where there is injustice, and heal a nation that is starving for leadership and decency and hope. Now is the time to ensure that our economic system works for everyone, that we can protect the health and safety of all of the American people, and that we will harness all of the Justice Department's levers for civil rights, justice and police reform, and climate justice, and so much more. As the late Congressman John Lewis said, democracy is not a state, it is an act. And I pledge to the American people that if confirmed, I will act for justice every day. I pledge that to you, President-elect. I pledge that to you, Vice President-elect. I am honored, deeply honored, for the chance to work together with activists for justice, with law enforcement, with this extraordinary team that I'm so humbled to serve, with the incredible women and men at the Justice Department to strengthen our democracy and to make equal justice under law a real promise for all.
Vanita Gupta, and you just heard her there, speaking yesterday as the designee Associate Attorney General for Civil Rights under Joe Biden's administration. She has been in the Justice Department before, has Vanita Gupta. She was in Obama's Justice Department, and it's just great to see a woman there, particularly a woman of color, especially. I hate that term, woman of color. You know, it's, you know, she's Indian by background, so a brown person. You know, I get it. It's just the way that society is. I like to call people black, brown, white, Asian, you know, I mean, but we're all people, obviously, but we have identities that are at our core that we cannot try to ignore or pretend that, oh, I don't see color when I see you. That kind of nonsense has got to stop. You do see me. I mean, you certainly see the color of the sweater I'm wearing if you would see me walking down the street. So this nonsense about I don't see color, I mean, that's such an offensive phrase anyway. It's I erase you, you know, I erase you so you don't exist. But anyway, I think I've spent a lot of time, and I'm going to spend more time in the future talking about these kinds of issues. The other person that you are going to hear from in a few moments is Kristen Clarke. Kristen Clarke is the Assistant Attorney General designee to Joe Biden's administration, and she was introduced yesterday as well, and it was really great to see that she came in, a woman who has her parents are from Jamaica, who is from Brooklyn herself, black woman, who has done excellent work. I mean, both Vanita Gupta and Kristen Clarke have been brilliant. I mean, all stellar. They have worked in the law and in public service for a long time now, and it was really good to hear Kristen Clarke.
to pursue the urgent, timeless cause of equal justice under law. I stand here today deeply inspired by the example of the late Thurgood Marshall, Constance Baker Motley, and other public servants who dedicated their lives to advancing the cause of justice. We are at a crossroads. If I am fortunate enough to be confirmed, we will turn the page on hate and close the door on discrimination by enforcing our federal civil rights laws. Growing up in Brooklyn, New York, my parents instilled in me an unrelenting belief in the principles of hard work and respect for the dignity and humanity of all people. I am deeply thankful for the trail that my parents blazed, and today I'm thinking about the pride that I know my mother, Pansy, my brother, Troy, my sister, Karen, and my partner, Mustafa, are feeling as I take on this challenging new opportunity. As a mom myself now, I see the future of America through the eyes of my son. And honestly, at times I am worried. Will he have full and equal access to the extraordinary opportunities of American life? Will he be able to embrace those opportunities in safety and dignity? Will all of America's children? Every parent lays awake some nights asking these same questions. I know that my own parents did. I was fortunate to benefit from amazing educational opportunities and plenty of lucky breaks that opened doors for me. But I know then, as I know today, that not everyone is blessed with the opportunities that I enjoyed. And that awareness has animated my life's work. It's what brought me to the Department of Justice, where I started my career, and it's what brings me back for this homecoming today.
I definitely liked what they had to say yesterday. Very encouraging, indeed. A woman who has Indian background, her parents are, she immigrated from India. And the other woman that you heard has a background in Jamaica. Her parents are Jamaican. And the diversity and inclusion is there. 3 women and 1 man in this group of the Attorney General picks. I think this is really good. Really good. I actually like this set of people. I don't know a lot about Lisa Monaco, but I do know a lot about the other 3, but particularly Vanita Gupta and Kristen Clarke. I think they're excellent picks. I would like to have seen, again, more prominent positions held by black women, women of color in general. And too many of these offices do have white men in them at the heads of them. And that's my one issue. It may or may not be yours, but it's mine. But I do think that there is a lot of diversity and inclusion in what we've seen from Joe Biden's picks. Again, my one thing is I think it's too top-heavy white male in the actual top positions. It's just mostly white men in a lot of these big positions. And I think that is not diverse enough. There should be a lot more diversity in the very highest positions in these groups. Gosh, I feel like I've covered a lot, but somehow I don't at the same time. Oh, there's lots more to come from the Joe Biden, Kamala Harris administration. I'll be doing a lot more on them as well as we get toward inauguration. The countdown is on. And also, of course, the Trump watch. Keep your eye on what's going to happen to this country between now and the 20th. That was always the thing I was most concerned about. Not what would happen on November 3rd or even before it, or even, quite frankly, a week after, but what would happen once we got to December and from December to January 20th. That's where I was concerned. And obviously now my concern and yours have been fully realized, because we've seen this week a terrorist attack on this country. Make no mistake about it. The seat of Washington, D.C. was attacked in a terrorist attack by white male thugs and violent people who have to be prosecuted like enemy combatants, like the enemy combatants that they are, including Donald J. Trump. Thank you very much for listening to this edition of The Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore.